Professor Wajackoyah, perhaps as you answer to that, what's your reaction to the 2-week ultimatum given by President Uhuru Kenyatta to speed up measures at the border point in order to facilitate easier movement of trucks, as well as solve the stalemate on maize at the border? I'm sure the border counties were definitely affected by this.
Actually, our president has shown the world that he had no problem with Tanzania at all. By reaching out and compelling his minister to work it out as soon as possible is a relief to farmers whose produce was actually getting destroyed as a result of bad weather across the border. And remember that there are third-party interests involved in these businesses. The banks have given loans to these people. These people have also hired transporters to transport their goods to this territory. And as my friend Mr. Minde said, and I really like the way you are articulating your side, that cordial relationship that was lacking has now been opened up. This barrier, the tariffs, immigration, which the president has said, the issue of immigration is within the East African Community regulations. Why do we have to stumble? Get rid of it. Let people come in freely, let them trade, and let people put food on their table, as long as they follow the regulations, health regulations in our country. Similarly, there was also that assurance from the other minister. So, in short, I think this is a very good milestone, again, for us as a country on the international platform, that Kenya has gone beyond measures of trivial issues and has opened up to the principles of World Trade Organization, General Agreement of Trade and Tariffs, and also the GATS. We are okay with it.
Okay, well, on paper it seems okay, but implementation at times is usually the issue, and we'll wait to see whether these promises will actually get to impact the Mwananchi at the lowest echelons of society. Nicodemus, Minde, talk to us about your take on the business meeting just yesterday, early morning. But even as you do, there was an issue of establishing simplified systems, especially at the border points, for facilitating testing and timely issuance of the COVID-19 certificates. This will definitely facilitate better trade between the two countries. Your take on how best to approach this?
Well, the business forum yesterday just underscored the importance of, the magnitude of the relations between these two countries. These two countries trade in volumes of trade, in terms of agricultural produce, in terms of mining, in terms of finished products, and so on and so forth. Oftentimes, this has actually been understated. But if you look at the data from both ministries of trade of these two respective countries, you can see the levels of import and exports between the two countries is quite vast. Tanzania sells a lot of its food and agricultural products to Kenya, and of course, other issues to do with timber, plastics, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, Kenya, exports finished material and finished products, and so on and so forth. So we saw yesterday in this business forum, investors speak about the bottlenecks, speak about the impediments that actually, have been witnessed in the past. And the two presidents were, courageous enough to speak about these challenges and how they are going to settle these challenges. For example, President Uhuru Kenyatta spoke about the need to have a good business environment. And of course, on her part, Madam President Samia Suluhu Hassan promised the same. And of course, we saw these Tanzanian investors and businessmen speak, without any fear about the challenges that they face in terms of trade licenses, in terms of commitment, and so on and so forth. And this was actually reciprocated immediately when President Uhuru Kenyatta spoke about the need to do away with these permits and so on and so forth. So again, it just underscored the need, the levels of interactions between the two countries. And of course, this has actually is going to be done through this joint commission of implementation, and the role played by the ministries, the role played by the East African Community Ministry, and so forth. So it's quite positive. And again, these things just need goodwill. You asked the question of implementation. Implementation starts with goodwill. And now the president has actually asked the minister in charge to actually clear these goods at the border. So it just shows you that goodwill is very important in terms of actualizing the implementation process.
Okay, goodwill definitely plays a part. Professor Wajackoyah, your take?
One of the things that I have to add on what my friend Minde has said is that, yes, we have seen the Tanzanian traders or business people raise their issues. Kenyans were not there to raise the issue. Even if they did, I think there are not many. We have businessmen like Mr. Lagat, D.L. Lagat. Lagat has opened up actually one of the biggest tea factories in Tanzania. But because of those impediments, that business, which took lots of money from other interests, third-party interests, has just been lying fallow. I'm happy that if Tanzanians are listening or watching us today, they should also look into the plight of our business people in Tanzania. We have over 500 business partnerships between Kenyans and Tanzanians. You could see also the other gentleman from Tanzania talking about the impediments that he has gone through when he came to open up a gas factory or what have you. The only thing he did not tell us is that was that impediment caused by the Kenyan side. If it was caused by the Kenyan side, then the Minister for Trade and the Minister for Agriculture should look into that, because that's a serious issue which actually calls into issues of corruption. And that also should also be a learning lesson for all of us in both sides of the aisle. The Tanzanians have been crying, we've had bad leadership. On the other side of Kenya, there is a problem with corruption. Let these things come out and let us move on.
Okay, so Professor Wajackoyah, do you think goodwill is enough to actually boost trade between these two countries? Because, I mean, Tanzania shares a nearly balanced trade with Kenya, importing goods and exporting in almost the same quantity, but it has been on a downward trend for at least the last 7 years or so. Do you think this goodwill will definitely lay the foundation to facilitate better trade relations?
Definitely. Goodwill has worked very well in Islamic countries, especially Pakistan and Bangladesh. Goodwill has worked well in Europe, especially with the countries like Italy. Italy thrives on goodwill. Goodwill is the key to go, because if you impose some kind of restrictions on trade, you impose restrictions on taxing what is without giving tax rebate, and especially with the problems we have had between Kenya and Tanzania, as well as the pandemic, which has put businesses down, I think we need to revitalize and give stimulus packets in terms of goodwill to neighboring businesses so that we can thrive and have people put food on their table.
Okay, well noted. Spot on. Nicodemus, perhaps let's talk about non-tariff barriers and the solution to challenges related to trade. And of course, one among them is the business visas. President Uhuru Kenyatta just yesterday mentioned that Tanzanians don't need work permits or business visas to enter and operate in Kenya. Of course, this is one of a raft of measures to woo investors into Kenya from Tanzania. What say you about this nitty-gritty challenges that at times on paper, the law is quite clear, but middlemen and perhaps petty politics definitely plays a key part in impeding this process?
Well, actually, back to my point on the goodwill, there's the principle of reciprocity, where you extend a hand and the other country almost pays back. And we have seen that the goodwill and the principle, that the President Uhuru Kenyatta has extended to Tanzanian businessmen in terms of coming to operate in Kenya without a visa and permits and all that. It's just a very good move, which should be replicated on the other side of the border. So it is up to Tanzania now to show this principle of reciprocity by also having a good operating environment for Kenyan businessmen. And of course, Tanzania is a very fertile country in terms of investments in various sectors, not just agriculture, not just, of course, we have a very thriving now, upcoming mining industry. We have, talk about tourism, talk about the hotel and hospitality industry where a majority of Kenyans are working. So this will be actually go hand in hand with, Tanzania replicating or Tanzania extending a hand to Kenya on what the president has said. Of course, we understand there are many other challenges, issues to do with protectionism, which again is affects trade. Of course, we have some levels of nationalism, employers, protecting the nascent labor industry in Tanzania. Of course, we have a very skilled manpower in Kenya and so on and so forth. So these are tough balancing acts which Tanzania, with the goodwill that Kenya has extended. And actually, going back to the question that you have asked about these legislations and issues to do with NTBs, taxes and duties and so on and so forth, actually this boils down, even if these things are not there, these two countries share a lot in common. A long border where these two communities have to interact in terms of movement and so on and so forth. So integration does not only fall in terms of political decisions or economic decisions, but it has also to do with the social connections which are historic, which have blood ties. We have just these artificial boundaries and so on and so forth. So it is very important to accept, to understand integration and bilateral engagement starts with the people. And with that, in terms of regional integration, is the bottom-up approach, where we look at this from the people-centered approach, and then we go all the way back to the top, where it involves high economics, high politics, and so on and so forth.
Okay. Professor Wajackoyah, as you add on that, I mean, the big question would be, because at times politics by middlemen definitely plays a key role, as I mentioned, in impeding the relations between these two countries. Would you picture a scenario where either president will actually crack the whip on public servants who are frustrating Tanzanian or Kenyan businessmen in terms of implementing these MOUs and other instruments?
First of all, as an expert on immigration law, the issue of permits raises red flags, because if you want to open up a corporation here and you're a foreigner, you are required to have a Class G permit. One of the requirements is you must show that you have 10 million in your bank account before you register your company or you bring in your company in this country. And when it goes to employment permit, that's a Class D, you must actually show that your employer has to apply for you in this case, and he must actually show to the Department of Immigration and Labor that he has sufficient monies which will not make you to have recourse to public funds. Now, if the goodwill does not look into that issue, then that itself is going to be an impediment. But on the other side, the Kenyan immigration side, through the Minister of Interior, and I must praise our Minister for Interior for having done a good job, there are always facilities on one border stop. There is always border management committees which are actually intertwined, and this has been ongoing. And that's why we have one border stop in Namanga, whereby you come in one side, everything is processed by one side, and then you just cross in. So that is already there. The only problem that we had was the political impasse. The political impasse which was actually brought in for no apparent reasons on our side. And I will defend my government on this, because I have not seen anywhere where our president has come up and told Tanzanians, don't come in, what have you. The problem was at the other side. Now that matter is sorted, and I don't want to go into details. Now, when it comes also to financial obligations in terms of easing the whole issue, does it mean that now we are going to have again ministerial meetings, board meetings, or what have you. Why can't it just be like what the president said? Open up, meet, shake hands, open up, and let us move as we have been doing. What about issues of East African law, the East African Community law on free movement of people? Do you require documentations to move across the border? The answer is yes, you only require an ID card. And the first person who did that was the president when he crossed into Tanzania. So let's resume as we were, but then also make value addition that because of the change of regime, the change of mathematics in political squarements in Tanzania, which has been an impediment, is no longer there. But then on the other side, also on the Tanzanian side, does Mama Samia Suluhu want to look into the political problems in Tanzania? Does she want also to talk to the political leadership in the opposition? Will she also guarantee what she promised us in Chadema, particularly my clans, when they reached out to her recently with a letter of accord saying, look, we need to meet, we need to talk.
Okay.
You have come in, you have made us feel happy. And then she said, well, we are going to talk after I come back from Kenya. Right. Is she going to speak to them, or is she going to listen to the Magufulians, those who remain, those who are hardcores, who do not want anything to do with humanity? Yes, Madam is going to do that.
Okay, well, that's well noted. We definitely have so much respect and utmost hope that changes will be effected in the country and steering it in the right direction. Nicodemus, as we conclude, a lot of work will be with the joint technical committees who will be convening immediately to conclude on a couple of matters. Talk of tourism, talk of issues to do with trade, political, defense, security, economic issues. Perhaps your word to the members of the Joint Committee as they deliberate on such matters. Is it to expedite these matters at the fastest rate possible in order to ensure that the promises are actually implemented? What would you say?
Well, this Joint Implementation Committee is very important. And it can work actually within the auspices of the East African Community, which is a regional body. And that's the essence of regional integration, actually, where you are pooling resources, you are pooling sovereignties, and in order to deal with issues of common interest to the integrating countries. So going forward, I think, in the past 5 to 6 years, especially under the leadership of President Magufuli, the East African Community was at its weakest in terms of, we rarely saw summits and meetings and decisions being made at this body, which actually is headquartered in Arusha. So for me, my reading of this situation, bilateral relations and implementations of bilateral engagements in terms of all those issues that you have mentioned, security, trade, tourism, and so on and so forth, have a very good avenue in the East African Community, which is this multilateral body where issues such as customs union are addressed, issues to do with the free movement of goods and services, and all these are protocols that have actually already been set out. Monetary union, and of course ultimately a political federation, which are all the key principles of regional integration. So the East Africa Community remains a pivotal body in terms of implementing these bilateral engagements and agreements that these countries have set out between themselves.
Okay, well noted, Nicodemus. Minde, over to Professor Wajackoyah as we conclude. Perhaps your message as we try and chart on this path to embrace the spirit of cooperation between the two countries and enhance bilateral trade and investment.
First of all, I would like to thank Minde for what he's just said. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to address that issue into two. Number one, ningependa Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan afungue na waachilie wale wafungwa ambao walifungwa wakati ule wa pandei. Na ningependa pia aongee na Watanzania wenzake, aongee na wana Chadema, aongee na wana CCM, hawa wawili, hawa vikundi viwili havina shida yoyote. Ningependa Mama Suluhu pia awe ni mama wetu, tumemkubali, aangalie mambo ya Tanzania wote, awalete katika meza moja ili tuendelee vile iliyokuwa zamani. Na ningependa pia kumuomba mama na kulilia hapa kama Mkenya kwa niaba ya chama cha Chadema. Wana Chadema hawana ubaya na wewe, huja wakosea. Tafadhali kaa nao chini kama watoto wako, kama mandugu zako, na tuone vile tutaendelea. Na kwa upande wa Kenya, ningemuomba rais wetu aendelee vile vile alivyofanya. Rais ametupatia uhuru wa kuongea. Rais ametupatia all kinds of freedoms in this country. Kenya is the only country where you can criticize your president and your president will not do anything wrong. And I would like Mama Suluhu also to read in between the lines on how Kenyans do their things. And with that, I also thank my friend Minde, and I thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well noted. I'm sure the message has been